want to welcome everyone out here tonight to our Read Irvine Accuracy and Media Award. And before we begin, I just want to also thank our co-sponsors tonight. Besides Accuracy and Media and Accuracy in Academia, we also had WMAL Radio, the Leadership Institute, Strive Communications, Valley Press, and Allegiance Lists. And our supporting sponsors, Let Freedom Ring, Young Conservatives Coalition, Eagle Forum, DC Young Republicans, It's First Friday, and Election Integrity Maryland. We're going to go ahead and begin this event, and we have as our first honoree Congressman Lamar Smith. He's going to have to rush back for a vote, so I'm going to make this very, very brief. Congressman Smith has been a great advocate for fighting media bias. He is really the brains, the everything behind the Media Fairness Caucus, which he formed many years ago. And when I first met him, he has been a tireless advocate for fighting for more accuracy in our press, which I think we all agree that we need. And it is my pleasure to introduce Congressman Lamar Smith.
Don, thank you for that, and let me sort of apologize to you all. I think one reason that we're off to a fairly fast start tonight is because of my vote starting at 6:30. And I also want to thank Chris. Where is Chris, the other? Right, Chris is right there. Chris, thank you for letting me go ahead real quickly. I'm on the program as being third. Chris is ahead of me, and Judge Janine is ahead of me as well. And has the judge arrived yet? Is she in the room? Okay, well, I was going to thank her as well. Chris, appreciate all you've done over the years. I've read your third generation radio, so you have good roots in what you do as well. Don, thank you again for that introduction. AIM, Accuracy in the Media, has been a stalwart of an ally. Without them, I don't know what many people in the country would do, because we need AIM to point out the bias that they have and that they've done so well. And I just want to mention briefly, and this got me into trouble several years ago, when I said publicly that I thought the greatest threat to the United States of America was a biased media. People could not believe I actually said that. But I want to explain why, and why I've never backed off of frankly, that observation. And the reason I think that a biased liberal media is the greatest threat to our country is because we rely upon the media to give us the facts. But if the American people don't get their facts, we lose our democracy. We rely upon the media to tell us what the facts are, and if they don't give us the facts, the American people can't make good decisions, and if the American people can't make good decisions, that's when we lose our form of democracy. And so that's why I think, frankly, liberal media bias is inimical to a democratic government. And when I talk about media bias, we're not alone. You may have seen the most recent poll. The distrust of the national media is now at an all-time high. 30% of the American people don't trust the media, and twice as many people think the problem is the media bias being liberal, not the media bias being conservative. So even with all the media bias that we encounter every day, even with day after day, night after night of media bias, the American people, at least to some extent, are seeing through that and realizing that the media is biased more liberally than conservatively by a 2-to-1 margin. So we have that with us. Don was nice enough to mention the Media Fairness Caucus that I started 6 years ago. And by the way, we started the caucus only with the view of trying to remind the media of their incredible responsibility to our people. We started the Media Fairness Caucus not to condemn the media, but just simply to hold them to the highest standards possible. And when we do that in any number of ways. I give speeches on the House floor. We have a bi-weekly newsletter that we put out with the examples of media bias over the last 2 weeks. And then we have a website, my own website, that people can go to see the newsletters or to get more information about media bias. And by the way, when I talk about the national liberal media, I intentionally do not use the word mainstream media. I think we ought to call them out as liberal, not mainstream. Mainstream somehow implies that the national media represents a majority of the American people. In my view, they do not. So let's call them liberal, not progressive, which has positive connotations, and not mainstream, which is inaccurate. So let's call the national media the liberal national media, not all of them, but many of them, and remind of them their awesome responsibility to give the American people the facts, not tell the American people what to think. And that's our refrain. That's our refrain when it comes to what we do at the Media Fairness Caucus is we say to the national media, give the American people the facts, don't tell them what to think. And that's, I would guess, a 90%er with the American people. Who's going to disagree with that? So anyway, that's what we've been doing, and I appreciate this award from AIM very, very much. It will be an incentive. I call this positive reinforcement for what we've been doing and will continue to do. But really, thanks to Don, Roger, and all the rest at AIM for all they do every single day to try to remind the American people that the media is not objective, is not biased as they ought to be. And we need to, frankly, engage the American people, and that's what AIM does so well, and that's what I'm trying to do too. When I say engage the American people, engage the media consumers, you know, we have at our disposal today, we have the internet, we have social media. We can get the word out far better now than we have been able to in past years. And so let's take advantage of all that. And also just, frankly, writing letters to the editor, writing letters to producers. A couple of years ago, I counted the number of letters to the editor that I wrote over a 2-year period of time. It was 150. Anytime I see an inaccuracy, anytime I see a bias that has anything to do with Congress or my jurisdiction as the chairman of the Science Committee today and the Judiciary Committee 2 Congresses ago, I write a letter to the editor, and I think that should be our standard as well. Don't let any inaccuracy go unanswered. And if we can engage, I say, the American people and get them to help us do that, we're going to be doing the greatest favor we possibly can for our country and for our democracy.
This week, I received an unsolicited email from someone talking about my father. So if you've read the backstory or the story in the program about my father, you know some of the accomplishments that he had over his career and his life. But I thought this would be an appropriate place to just kind of read this to show the kind of influence that he had with others. Don, in my freshman year at Adams State College in Alamosa, Colorado, your dad was invited to speak on behalf of the political science department, and I can vividly remember his presentation despite the fact it took place way back in 1979. While I was raised primarily in a right-leaning home by a self-employed father until I heard Reed's presentation, I was slowly being swayed by the liberal media to believe what they reported was truthful. Ever since that day in 1979, I've been keen to notice the obvious but even small things like candidate photos and videos and how the liberal media will show bias by having great photos of their favorite candidates and hideous ones of their opponents. It happens all over the world, even with criminal cases like Trayvon Martin and Michael Brown. When my wife and I watched the 2000 presidential elections together, I pointed out to her how the facial expressions and demeanor of the election reporters changed when they announced the state for Bush or Gore, and she couldn't believe it. Keep up the great work in exposing the media for what they do and continue to educate people on the bias your dad had a positive effect on me, and thanks to that presentation. I don't follow the media like the other sheep. So I think that's a great tribute to my father, and I think there are many more out there like this person who wrote to me in terms of the influence that he had.
Our next two, first we've got two who I think in this crowd are considered rock stars. And the first one we're going to introduce right now is Chris Plant. And many of you know Chris. He does from 9 to noon every weekday, 9:07 to be exact. He's on there acting as a one-man media watchdog brigade. He really goes after him. And I just wanted to cite an example. Yesterday, listening to him, and he's often my prep work. You know, before I go into the office, I listen to Chris, and I listen to him on my computer. And I urge you all to tell your friends all over the country, all over the world, to tune in and listen to him. Because, for instance, there was a great example yesterday, the New York Times story about the Clinton cash book. And he pointed out right off how the Times twists his story. Right in the first paragraph, they make it all about Rand Paul. You know, the Republicans are criticizing it, and at the very end, you find out that Bill Clinton gave 13 speeches in the period when Hillary was Secretary of State, and 11 that he received over $500,000 for. 11 of the 13 were during that period when she was Secretary of State. Anyway, Chris came from the belly of the beast, 17 years with CNN. He comes up with classic one-liners, humor, insightful knowledge, incredible, you know, what's at his fingertips. It's so impressive every day. And Chris, why don't you come up here, and we want to give you... So here we have the Reed Irvine Accuracy in Media Award for Excellence in Journalism to honor your pursuit of truth and dedication to a free America. Chris,
Thanks very
honor
much.
having you here.
Thank you. Thanks so very much. Hey guys. Hey, 2 microphones. It's like I'll leave the Monica Lewinsky jokes alone. Now, at home, I have a couple of lucite blocks that they gave me when I was on my previous iteration, and I have an Edward R. Murrow Award, which is a lucite block. I sometimes make reference to lucite blocks, and it's for coverage of September 11th, 2001, and it's a nice award, and it's and it's good. It was appreciated, I guess. But let me say that I'm much more proud of this one. I'm really much more proud of this. I'm going to, it's the Edward R. Murrow is kind of in the back of a shelf. This will be displayed prominently and proudly because of Reed Irvine's legacy and the importance of what he started. And he really started the modern movement of holding their feet to the fire. He's the first one that sort of threw a flag on the play that woke everybody up and said, say, wait a minute, they're not giving us all of the information here. They're not giving a balanced report. We think that Walter Cronkite is giving us everything we need to hear, but he's not. And on the Vietnam War, which is where Reed Irvine started this mission, clearly we can see in the rearview mirror that they didn't report fairly. They didn't report in a balanced way. Walter Cronkite actually came over to the house a couple of times, pardon me, when I was a kid. And I thought, gee, it's Uncle Walter. What a great guy. Now, in retrospect, I'm not very impressed with the news media. I spent, as was mentioned, 17 years with CNN, and I feel like I did good, honest work every day, and a lot of people there did. But in the end, it's kind of an embarrassment. It's sad what's happened to the news media. It's tragic, and as the congressman was saying, it's very, very important to the future of America that we have a news media that simply tells the truth in a fair and balanced way, and they don't. From the New York Times piece where they open up by polarizing the debate around Rand Paul, of all things, when it's a book about the Clintons and cash, is just an everyday example of what goes on. Chris Matthews is interviewing the President of the United States today, and it's going to air tonight. I'm missing it, and I forgot to hit my DVR, but it's not a level playing field. It's not fair. It's not balanced, and they need to be called on it. And I'm glad that I have the opportunity to do that every day. I enjoy doing it. I do it because it needs to be done, and because it's fun. And they make it so easy that, honestly, I could show up every day and do 3 hours just on the news media and what they've done in the preceding 24 hours. It's so unbalanced, it's so unfair, and it's never been worse than it is now with Barack Obama, and now Hillary Clinton jumping into the fray. We're going to see a new layer, a new level. But the coverage of President Obama over the last 6 years has been deplorable. It's been third world. It's been Soviet-style reporting. It's so completely out of whack that I know very intelligent people who are serious people, who are very middle of the road politically, who believe that President Obama's presidency has been really great, who believe that what he's done with terrorism is working very well, that the economy is chugging along at a really great rate, that the unemployment rate is really 5.5%, who believe what they're being told by the media. And when I, depending on the circumstances, hear this from friends and people that I respect, I try to gingerly enlighten them, across the dinner table. But most of the time, honestly, I kind of leave it alone. I might send them an email. I might recommend that they read something that I think they should read. And honestly, I think here and there, more and more people are waking up to the reality of the news media. There was a fun poll, I guess it was Quinnipiac a couple of weeks ago, a few weeks ago now, that asked people which news organization they trust most. And it was 28%, 29% said Fox News was their most trusted news organization. 10% said CBS News, 10% said NBC News, and 8% said NBC News. And if you add all three of the networks up, they didn't match the number that Fox News got by itself. The little news organization that they still target and they hate so much, because they recognize that Fox News puts the lie to everything that they've been doing for decades. That Fox News exposes the lie that is NBC News, just to name one news organization. And the fact that Americans, in much larger numbers, go to Fox News for their news and information rather than NBC, ABC, and CBS, which used to have a lock on this, means that the wind is blowing in the right direction. Now, I don't want to get overly optimistic and leap to any conclusions here, but I do see people waking up to the fact that the news media cannot be trusted. The Washington Post and the New York Times and so on have fewer people believing what they're saying than at any time in modern history. And that's good, that's progress. And honestly, Reed Irvine kind of started that. Reed Irvine was the first man over the wall. And he sent up a flare, and he was by himself for a very long time. And the big dogs went after him, and they tried to chew him up. The Ted Koppels, and he's on Nightline, he's on all of the Crossfire and the various shows that he appeared on early on. And it was like he was the outlier. He's no longer the outlier. He started something. And now it's big. And people are paying attention. And this is an important award. I'm very, very pleased with this award, and I'm going to display it proudly. The Edward R. Murrow Award gets pushed to the back.
Next is our award, the Reed Irvine Award for Investigative Journalism. And we talk about a rock star. We've got another one in the room here. Judge Jeanine Pirro, you all know her. She has been a prosecutor, a judge, an author. Her TV show is incredible. If you don't watch it, you need to start watching it. Her opening statement every night, every Saturday night, is something I know a lot of people are sitting in front of their TV sets waiting to hear, because like this last one about Hillary, the last couple have been about Hillary, but whether she's talking about Benghazi or the EMP, the electromagnetic pulse, and she approaches these subjects with the mind of a prosecutor, which you see, there's a lot in common with investigative journalism. And she tells the truth, she tells a story, she puts it together in such a way that it's compelling, it's powerful, and I think we hope all of you are regular watchers and viewers of her show. So without further ado, let me introduce Judge Jeanine.
I'm getting the award now? Okay, I get the award first. Thank you.
And it says the Reed Irvine Award for Accuracy in Media for Investigative Reporting presented to Judge Jeanine Pirro to honor your pursuit of the truth and dedication to hard-hitting journalism.
Thank you.
All right.
Thank you so much. Thank you. Thank you. Thank you all. I must tell you that I didn't start out thinking that I would ever do anything like this. You know, I grew up in upstate New York, small town America. I'm sure you've never heard of it. The town was called Elmira. Oh, all right. Most people say it's closed when they get there. But I grew up in an ordinary family. You know, we prized my parents' education and school and God, and my father a veteran, grandfather a veteran. You know, it was all about God, country, education, and making a difference. I made a decision when I was very young to be a lawyer. I don't know, I think I was watching Perry Mason. And that was a long time ago for you youngins in the room. And I remember that Perry Mason always was able to get to the truth. You know, he was always able to free the guy who was wrongly accused. And honestly, I could never understand how Hamilton Berger, who was the DA, ever got reelected. I mean, the guy did nothing but lose cases. But anyway, so I followed my dream and I became a prosecutor in Westchester County, New York, and I realized that the rights of battered women was something that most states didn't recognize. I mean, in the late 70s, you could shoot, stab, beat, or brutalize your wife, and if you didn't kill her, it wasn't a crime. This is in the United States of America, folks. In 1978, there was a law in the books that if you beat your wife after 10 p.m., it was a crime. Get it? It's going to disturb the quiet. So I started the first domestic violence unit in the country, and so for me, it was always about truth and justice and right and wrong. I tried cases, I loved the courtroom, and after 15 years, I went to the bench. I thought I died when I got there. I couldn't fight, I couldn't argue. I felt like I was a referee. No insult to the judges. My mother was very upset. How can you give up your robe? And I had this long term, and I just didn't want to finish it. Law enforcement was in my blood. I ran for DA and again, and I found that there was able to be a level playing field in courtrooms, that we could take the wrongdoer and make the wrongdoer accountable for victimizing a person who never chose to be a part of the system in the first place. After 32 years, I left. I went into television, I had a court show, and now I'm with Roger Ailes at Fox. What I do at Fox is not that different from what I do on television. From what I did in the courtroom, I should say. It's about truth and justice, right and wrong. It's about evidence. It's about a position, a list of evidence, and a conclusion. It's an argument. And that's what I do every week. And the most disappointing part of all this, folks, is the fact that nobody really cares about the truth anymore. It's a game. It's theater. It's a shell game where if she says this, if it's a video, and this guy's going to go to jail for creating the video, even though this is America and we have a First Amendment right to say whatever the hell we damn well please, we're going to change the focus of our government. And what is happening before us today is mind-boggling. And so I go forward every week. I don't really care about, you know, who's right and who's wrong. It's about where the evidence takes you. It's just like a courtroom. If they say something that doesn't make sense, you have an obligation to rebut it. And when the mainstream media is more concerned about an ideology, about politics, than truth and right and wrong, I'm telling you folks, we are in real trouble. We are in real trouble in this country. And when the demographics of this country are being changed, the way they're being changed now, whether it's this new UN refugee program where people are being brought in from the Middle East and local and state officials are not being told where they're brought in, what their backgrounds are, as well as what happened this summer from Central America. We let them in, They say I'm with the Latin Kings or MS-13, and I'm a murderer and I have a criminal record. Well, we let him in. Okay, that's bad enough because we have to pay for it. But what's worse is that with this allegiance that is now being created with this influx of people, the allegiance to the Democratic Party and the ideology, I worry about this nation, whether a Republican can win, whether or not our voices are being submerged in this cacophony of, oh, this is America, everybody gets everything for free, and you know, it's great, and with our short memory span, we're in big trouble. This award means a great deal to me. Reed Irvine saw in the late 60s, as Chris Plant just said, he saw a problem, the reporting of the Vietnam War. And he stood up, and you know what was amazing about it? And I didn't know that much about him. What was amazing was when he started coming on the scene, people were saying, well, we really do have enough conservative people on television, as if enough of you over there, we don't need any more of you, we're real good where we are. But I'm telling you, I go around the country. Every week I give a speech somewhere. This country is frightened. Most people agree with what we think, but it is the intelligentsia. It is the academic focus of many in the Northeast who are more interested in their agenda and their ideology. I only care about America. I care about what my father, my grandfather fought for. I am schooled in truth and justice, and I hate lies. I hate people who lie. It makes me crazy. Half of the people that we hear from in Washington ought to, well, you know what, ought to be made more accountable. How's that? Sorry. But when the Attorney General, who sits at the citadel of power vis-a-vis law enforcement in this country, who says he didn't know about Fast and Furious, and then we find out he knew about Fast and Furious, and then he tells us, well, the letter that we wrote, you know, we have to take it back, but only after we find out the truth. This is bad. It's wrong. And by the way, the whole idea of providing these weapons to the drug cartels, they're killing people in Mexico too. Has anybody thought about the fact that a lot of people in Mexico are really angry with us because they think America is selling, and we're not even selling them, we're giving away for free these guns to the cartels. And the rest of the world, our friends, they're saying, wait a minute, we're Israel. We're on the same side. Or we're this country, or we're that country. There is a realignment in terms of sides. There's a lot to be concerned about. I'm going to continue my mission. I keep saying that this is something that I won't stop until I don't have a following. But right now, it's all too important. I love what I do. I love this country. I think it's going to take a long time to get it back to where it was. Politics right now is not about being responsive to the American people. It's about people creating, whether it's financial wealth. I don't like it when the Secretary of State is raising money on her personal email and her personal server, and the Secretary of State is now saying that, oh, you know, there's nothing improper and I'll continue even if I am president to take money from other countries. There's something really wrong with all of this. Bottom line, we can make a difference. I believe that we can. And Chris was right. Fox is trusted. We put it out there, people believe it. But there's a lot to do, and everyone in this room can do something. Social media, blogs, the internet, Twitter, Facebook, get it out there in a way where we've never been able to do it before. And I really think that we can make a difference. And I know that with the award that you've given me tonight, I have a support system when I get responses like you've given me tonight. And I thank you for that, and I thank the Reed Irvine Foundation.